Willie D Live.
What's up, family? In what can only be accurately described as straight hate, the most stunning in NFL recent history, Colorado Buffaloes quarterback Shadeur Sanders, one of the best in college football, went undrafted in rounds 1, 2, and 3. He will now have to hope to hear his name called on Saturday, the final day of the NFL draft, which includes rounds 4 through 7. Family, they are doing this boy dirty for real. This dude is easily one of the best players in the game, and he's one of the most entertaining players in the game. There is not 64 better players in college football, in the college football draft, than Shadeur Sanders. They've already picked like 5 quarterbacks before him. We're talking about all these teams that had action. They picked 5 quarterbacks. You can argue that maybe, 1 or 2 of those dudes are better than him, maybe even 3. But come on, fam. We know what this is. Insert Stephen A. Stephen A says he believes that Shadeur went undrafted because of Deion Sanders, his father. He went undrafted because of Deion Sanders. He was like, who wants to deal with Deion Sanders? A lot of people want to deal with Deion Sanders, except the people who can't control Deion Sanders. How is it that Deion is to blame for Shadeur, his son, not making it to the NFL, not being drafted, being passed over for guys who are less talented? How is that his father's fault, who's coached him from the moment he was able to put on a uniform, to hold a ball in his hand? His daddy coached him. His daddy coached him from pee-wee through middle school, high school, college. And now he's had to step back because he's going to the pros and he's going to be coached by somebody else. Make no mistake about it, haters. He's going to make it. The thing is this, fam. Explain to me, how is it that Deion Sanders is good enough to get his son to the NFL draft, to get his son on these big stages, to prepare his son to be one of the best in the game? But once he get to the next level, the highest level, now he's no longer good enough. He's not even good enough to be around his son, to have any kind of influence on his son's decisions. They did the same thing to Serena and Venus's father, Richard Williams. They did the same thing to Michael Jackson's father. They did the same thing to Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father. They did the same thing over and over and over and over again. And they did the same thing to LeVar Ball's sons. They can't stand to have a black man in close proximity of his children. Yeah, man. That's why when you see these commercials and you see them highlighting the athlete, they're always talking about the mother. They purposely go out of their way to omit the father in any type of activity that has to do with the child. Now, if the father is a deadbeat, if he's in prison, oh, they want to show that story. They're going to show that story fast. Because they want you to think that every single player that come through the NFL or basketball that's black, you know, everybody had hardship. Everybody got a daddy that's not present, in prison, dead, on drugs. That's the narrative that they want to paint. And they show the mother because oftentimes they can control the mother. They're so cold-blooded with it that they'll create beef between the mother and the father where there is none. And don't let them be co-parenting. Don't let them live in different households. Oh, they don't get in the mama ear. Next thing you know, she's trying to help them distance her child from their father, who's been there for all the while. It is absolutely stunning to me sometimes when I see these stories about these athletes and they never mention the father, and I find out years later that the father was there all along. They just never showed him. Let me tell you something, fathers, black fathers, you need to be intentional about letting the media see you. You need to be intentional. I'm not talking about getting in the way and being a nuisance, but they need to know that's yours. You did that. They need to know that. They need to know that, yeah, you have a talented child, but without your input, perhaps they wouldn't have gotten that far. They try to act like these kids who are exceptional got there all by themselves. Some kind of way they was left to their own devices and they just figured it out and they started taking care of their whole family, put the whole family on their back and just took care of everybody. These uncivilized mutts. This is all part of the plan, man. Talking about they didn't like the way Shakur worked out and they didn't like the way he was talking during interviews. Fam, I ain't got to go down the rabbit hole of so many others who have been drafted, who may have had attitude or whatever, but as long as they were not there committing a crime, or at least the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball did not find out, they wasn't stripping at all. I remember Johnny Manziel was getting in trouble all the time. He was pretty much a drunk. All the time, drinking and getting in trouble. And what did they do? Sweep it under the rug. But these black athletes, man, they can't do jack. They gotta be squeaky clean. They can't afford to make one mistake. And I'm not saying that as if they should be able to make a mistake. I'm not trying to encourage anybody to make a mistake, but I'm just saying how it goes and making sure that you're aware of the double standards. How is it? I'm gonna ask this question again. I'm gonna finish the way I started off. How is it that Deion Sanders is good enough to raise his son to be an honorable kid, to be a respectable kid, to be a talented kid, to whereas he's being watched by the entire nation. The entire nation. He's being watched, he's revered globally. The boy is special. And he's undrafted. Family, y'all know how this is. Y'all know how this go. Even if you're not the most talented, if you can put meat in the seat, they are going to put you on. They're going to give you the bag. So there is no excuse that they can come up with to justify this. So when y'all talk all of this, well, why does everything have to be about a race? What? You tell me. It's cold-blooded, man. That's cold-blooded. I suspect that Shakur will get drafted. If he don't, he's going to have to walk on. I would advise everybody to play it cool. Let him get in. They're trying to keep him out. Let him get in. What you don't want to happen is that he becomes a distraction, because that's what they use to keep Kaepernick out. Oh man, we hire him, he's gonna have to deal with so many distractions. It's just gonna be a distraction. It's just best not to deal with him. But you see how they operate? To maintain control, they will sacrifice a little money. They ain't gonna sacrifice everything now, because they know, talent comes $1 a dozen. They know they can get more talent. Just like if you break your leg, you commit a crime, end up in jail, it ain't gonna stop the league. The machine gonna keep on moving forward. But this is cold-blooded what they're doing to that kid. And really, the NFL need to be boycotted. That's right, I said it. The NFL should be boycotted for this. And I see why. They can't even afford something like that. They just started getting their fan base back on track. And now they pull something like this. This ain't gonna go over well for the NFL overall. I can see them right now getting in that room and all of them doing that little agreement that they do. Because they had to agree with this. They all got the call. All of those owners got the call. They may have left one or two owners out. Like, but what about such? Well, he's a rebel, I don't think we're going to be able to. Well, you know what? They don't need a quarterback, so we ain't going to have to worry about them. Yeah, I'm sure they got together and conspired to keep that boy out of the league. So we'll see what happens Saturday. It's cold-blooded though, fam. This ain't even the sins of the father. This is the wins of the father. No more talk.